This area.
We can go left or down that ladder.
Looks like everyone is joining, even game developers. Which I had to ask, is Neil Druckmann joining as well? Since Anita Sarkeesian is joining?
So things continue to get worse and worse in this whole censorship debacle that is affecting the gaming industry right now. But apparently the International Game Developers Association, an organization that is for game developers, is now being forced to get involved in this entire debacle known as censorship in gaming. It's amazing to see everybody starting to come together and really try to bring the conversation to the center and say, hey man, this is not cool. No matter which side of the aisle you may be sitting right now, at the end of the day, nobody agrees with this shit, and we need to do something that's going to be better for gaming as a whole, because otherwise we are going to let our games be decided upon by a bunch of dusty old women that haven't played a video game in their entire life, unless you count Candy Crush. This is not something that anybody wants to allow to happen. This is not a world that anybody wants to live in.
The question we all had to ask, what about Neil Druckmann? Don't forget, Anita Sarkeesian is also joining. So, Neil, are you joining as well? What? You're not? Seriously, make your mind. Sarkeesian is also joining the conversation. How are you gonna respond to that?
An article here from good old Variety that says game developers organization is supposedly alarmed by censorship and delisting of not safe for work games following the backlash. And this is just an overall news roundup. The International Game Developers Association, also known as IGDA, released a statement Tuesday calling for a supposed greater transparency and fairness in how adult games are moderated and actioned across major platforms. Now, listen, I'm glad that they're doing this. It kind of sucks that it took this to happen for them to get their crap together and try to call for something like this. But to be fair, transparency is something that I've been calling for the gaming industry for many years now. I've been saying that the gaming industry, unfortunately, is one of the most non-transparent companies or industries, whatever you want to call it, one of the most non-transparent industries out there in the universe, right? The gaming industry does not like to be transparent in any capacity whatsoever.
Well, during the PS2 era, they do, but sadly now, they don't. I think they started right after the PS3 era. The whole non-transparency thing. I mean, back then, during the PS2 and PS1 era, there was no YouTube, there was no independent journalists or even video game reviewers. There was none. YouTube, yes, it exists, but it's still early on, okay? There was no video game reviewers during that time. If there was, there were just small percentage.
Like to maintain themselves in the shadows, and all the dirt that they do, they like to keep in the shadows as well, as much as they possibly can. And then they'll gaslight their gamers, and they'll say, well, whatever you think is happening is not happening. Whatever you're seeing with your eyes, don't believe it. That's how the gaming industry is, and unfortunately, these developers have benefited from something like that. But now it seems like it's coming to bite them in the ass a little bit with all the censorship that's going on by these platforms that are denying them service, because that's really what it is. They're being denied service. So anyway, it calls for greater transparency and fairness. And then the adult content video games for the platforms, including Steam and itch.io, were recently taken down. The IGDA said that it was alarmed by the vague enforcement of policies delisting, deplatforming legal, consensual, and ethically developed games. Now, here's the greatest thing about all this, right? This is something that we talked about many, many, many times, right? Number one, the terms of service for MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, Stripe, they are all extremely vague. We know this. They're vague for a reason. They're vague just like all other terms of service for many companies are vague. It's so that it allows them to perform overreach as much as they possibly can. It allows them to take advantage of many people as much as they possibly can. It also allows them to protect themselves as much as they possibly can. The more vague they make their TOS, the easier it is for them to get away with what they want to try to get away with, right? Whether it's now or in the future.
So this is why they got away with it. Unbelievable. Even though they will get away. But just remember one thing. This is something I'm going to keep on bringing it up. How quickly people forget that all it takes to change one course of history is the will of a single man. Meaning, all it's going to take is one people within those payment processor or even collective shout to say something that will bury them for good.
doesn't matter. It helps them greatly if it remains as vague as possible. This is what allowed them to delist and deplatform this legal content, which again, we need to specify. This is legal content. Everybody knows what is illegal content. This was not it, right? And ethically developed games, which again, by the way, Variety had to throw in a little bit of their ideology because it's Variety, so they can't help themselves. But they said games that are especially from LGBTQ plus and marginalized creators. Why that is important, I have no idea. It's amazing that even during a conversation where all of us should be coming together in an agreement and say this is really stupid, regardless of which side of the aisle you are on, Variety couldn't help themselves but make LGBTQ plus and marginalized people stand out amongst everybody else as if their games should be protected more than anyone else. It's amazing how they just can't help themselves. But in any case, they say the removal of these games and change in policy came amid pressure from itch.io's payment processors' objections to the adult content games. The Game Developers Organization said the following: developers deserve clear rules, fair warnings, and the right to appeal in these cases, which, by the way, I agree. They should have the right to appeal and explain that their game is completely legal. It's ethically made, right? There's nothing wrong with what their game is. And the simple fact is, if the appeal gets denied, then Steam or itch.io is purposely taking down legal content at the behest of whoever.
Isn't that breaking the law or something? I mean, look, if it's legal content, why are they censoring things? Seriously, just on behalf of what? A third-party idiots or a Karen? No, you don't do that. You're about to open out your lawsuit. Or in this case, Collective Shout is about to be open in a lawsuit. That's a whole nother video into itself, folks.
Exhumed, which was a very hardcore but still ethically legal horror game or psychological horror game that Steam took down and banned completely due to real people being, images of like sexual whatever. They basically took it down for their new terms of service, and they banned it on the 28th of last month. It says but the notes are that the IGDA is advocating for reform, developer voice, and platform accountability, not for the defense of harmful material. And this is very key right here. This is what everybody should be advocating for. We should be advocating for reform. Absolutely. When it comes to these payment processors having all this power to determine what is allowed and what's not, they are literally the arbiters of what content is allowed and what's not. That is insane. They are not a legal body, right? They don't make laws. They don't get to decide what's legal and what's not based on their fees. So we need to reform these companies, or at least the rules around them. The developer voices should be heard. There should be an appeal process, but unfortunately, as we learned with Vile Exhumed, when this game was banned, there was no appeal process. You couldn't actually appeal anything. Like, she got banned. The developer of this game is a female, and she got banned immediately with no any form of appeal whatsoever. She wasn't allowed to appeal anything. So you should be able to appeal it and explain why the game should be able to stick and give yourself another chance, but they don't really have that.
Also, if this game doesn't break the law or anything, then it should be allowed to even sell. They should be reforming. These payment processors should not given a power just to do this because their fifis hurt. And guess what happens? When you pissed off one person, you're gonna piss off everybody. Look what happened with the UK. They're rising up, and I know it's not relevant, but it is gonna connect it to this. They're rising up against government's migration policy, and some people are being arrested for anti-migration posts. No, generally, it happens in the UK. The UK is also threatening to take control of YouTube because the BBC News and Channel 4, aka a dying news platform, which, did any of us care about them? When was the last time any of you cared about the mainstream media such as BBC News or Channel 4?
Explain why the game should be able to stick and give yourself another chance, but they don't really have that. And platform accountability should be a thing as well, but to be fair, that's more so going to be in the public eye, right? YouTubers, journalists, or if you want to call them that, we're all going to be holding these platforms accountable and calling out the nonsense that they do, even if it's at the behest of someone else. If it's at the behest of the payment processors, it doesn't matter. Steam's banning the games, right? They're actively choosing to remove them from the platform, so we got to call them out for it. As much as I love Steam, it doesn't matter. Ain't no shilling here. We got to call them out for their nonsense when they do it. But the IGDA says that it is now gathering anonymized data to assess the real impact of recent content removals and will be using those results to inform our advocacy on behalf of the affected developers. So it looks like you're going to be gathering all the information about the most recently taken down video games, whether they're Gooner games, horror games, whatever. They're going to be getting all the information they possibly can from Steam and itch.io and compile it together to essentially try to build something better for developers. So I think they're overall going to be doing a good thing. Hopefully they can get a little bit farther in terms of reaching out to these companies than perhaps a standard sole developer could. Because, you know, to be honest with you, if you look at some of these posts here on Azzim, they tried to reach out to the payment processors and all they got was very generic corporate statements, right? So you're better off potentially getting a real statement if a company or organization like this is the one that would reach out versus a solo developer. So
Looks like Variety had to put in their ideology, which is why there is also, like I would say, there's a limitation when this whole enemy of my enemy thing. If Anita Sarkeesian is also joining the conversation saying censorship is bad, what about Neil Cuckman? Has anybody heard anything from him? That's the real question. I'm theorizing that Neil Cuckman is probably sweating right now because is my game gonna be next? Neil Cuckman will probably say, if this is true, then oh no, my game's gonna get nuked. But that's just besides the point, but we'll see what happens next. Now I'm glad that game developers are now uniting. I mean, we had to keep this conversation, we had to keep the pressure. And not only that, guess what? It's working. Payment processor is responding. Yes, they respond with a corporatized message. And now Collective Shout is running away like a coward, expected. And here's another kicker. The UK government, or in this case, the citizens of UK, is rising up against the UK government on migration policy, of which it is directly tied to the elite police arresting people for anti-immigration posts. So I'm telling you this, it's deeply connected. And right now, all it's going to take one person in one of them to actually bury them all for good, deep, deep in the ground.
This is...
It's a place to honor the dead. They're still waiting for the salvation Mother Sphere promised them.
Damn.
I want to send the memories left here to Mother Sphere. That's where they belong.
I'll help.
Me too, me too.
Thank you, both of you.
Leave a like and subscribe if you want woke or anti-woke detected, or you just want to see me play games, or perhaps you like trending topics. Visit my second, third, and fourth channel up here or link in the description.